The transport shuttle descended through the atmosphere of Station Kepler 7, carrying its newest batch of cadets to the Galactic Military Academy. Among the passengers sat Jiho Park, a young man from Earth, staring out the viewport at the massive structure floating in orbit. His black hair was tied back in a small ponytail, a style his grandfather had worn during his military service. It was tradition in his family. It meant something. Jiho was the only human on the shuttle. The other cadets belonged to species he had only seen in training videos. The Valerians were tall with blue skin and forearms. The Aquarians had translucent skin and moved with fluid grace. There were crystalline beings whose bodies reflected light in rainbow patterns, avian creatures with feathers and sharp eyes, and insectoids with chitinous armor covering their bodies. None of them talked to him. They whispered among themselves, glancing his way with expressions he couldn't quite read. Curiosity, disgust? He wasn't sure. When the shuttle docked, a stern-looking instructor greeted them. She read names from a data pad, assigning cadets to their squads. Jiho listened carefully until he heard his name paired with 5 others: Minho, Hyerin, Daejin, Yuna, and Sunwoo. His new squad. His new family for the next year of training. The barracks were clean and functional. 6 bunks arranged in a circle, lockers for personal gear, and a common area with a table and chairs. Jiho chose the bunk nearest the door and began unpacking his things. He could feel the others watching him. "So you're the Deathworlder," said a voice. Jiho turned to see Minho, a Valerian with 4 muscular arms and confident posture. He was clearly the squad leader. "I've heard stories about Earth. They say your planet tries to kill everything that lives on it." "It's home," Jiho replied simply. Hyerin, an Aquarian female, laughed. It was a musical sound, but not kind. "Your gravity is twice what civilized worlds consider safe. Your oceans are filled with creatures that eat each other. Your weather systems can level cities. And you people think that's normal?" Jiho didn't respond. He continued unpacking. Daejin, whose crystalline body sparkled under the lights, stepped closer. "Can you even handle station gravity? It must feel like floating to you." "I'm fine," Jiho said. Yuna, the avian, ruffled her feathers. "He probably thinks he's stronger than all of us because he grew up in a hell world." Typical primitive thinking. Sunwoo, the insectoid, said nothing but clicked his mandibles in what might have been agreement. The first week was difficult. Jiho tried to fit in, but his squad mates made it clear he was different. When they ran obstacle courses, they mocked how easily he completed them. When they studied tactics, they ignored his suggestions. When they ate meals together, they talked around him like he wasn't there. The worst part was the comments about his appearance. Hyerin kept pointing at his ponytail, asking why he kept dead protein strands on his head. Minho called it primitive decoration. Yuna said it looked like something an animal would have. Jiho explained once that it was cultural, that in his family hair represented honor and connection to ancestors, that his grandfather had worn his hair the same way. Minho had laughed. "Your grandfather sounds as backwards as you." After that, Jiho stopped explaining. 2 months into training, the squad was assigned a night navigation exercise. They had to move through a simulated forest environment, locate 3 checkpoints, and return to base before dawn. Standard procedure. Jiho had done similar training on Earth. The exercise went well. Jiho actually enjoyed working in the dark using natural cover, moving quietly. His squad mates struggled more than he did, but they completed the mission. When they returned to barracks, everyone was exhausted. Jiho showered, changed into sleep clothes, and collapsed onto his bunk. He was asleep within minutes. He didn't hear them approach, didn't feel the restraints until it was too late. Jiho woke to find his arms and legs held down. Minho's forearms were strong, pinning him to the mattress. Hyerin held a small electric razor, the kind used for medical procedures. Daejin and Yuna stood nearby, holding cameras. Sunwoo guarded the door. "What are you doing?" Jiho demanded, struggling against the grip. "Teaching you a lesson about fitting in," Minho said. "You think you're special? You think your primitive customs matter here? They don't." The razor buzzed to life. Jiho fought. He thrashed and twisted, using every bit of strength he had. But Minho was larger, had more limbs, and had leverage. Hyerin moved the razor across Jiho's scalp in smooth strokes. He felt his hair falling away, felt the cold air touching skin that had been covered. They were laughing. All of them except Sunwoo, who simply watched. When it was done, they released him. Jiho's hands went to his head, feeling the complete baldness, the absence of what had been there. His reflection in the polished metal locker showed a stranger staring back. "Now you look like a proper cadet," Hyerin said, still giggling. Minho held up a camera. "Smile for the Academy Network." The video was uploaded before Jiho could stop them. Within an hour, it had spread across every screen in the facility. Cadets he'd never met were laughing at him. The clip showed him struggling, showed the razor removing his hair, showed his face when he saw what they'd done. The humiliation was complete. Jiho reported it to the instructors the next morning. He stood at attention in front of Senior Instructor Borum, a grizzled woman who had served in multiple conflicts. "Sir, I want to file a formal complaint against my squad mates," Jiho said, keeping his voice steady. Borum looked at him, then at the report on her datapad. "I've seen the video. The entire station has seen it." "Then you know what they did." "I see a squad engaging in bonding activities," Borum said carefully. "Perhaps a bit rough, but nothing that caused permanent harm. You need thicker skin if you're going to survive military service. They restrained me against my will. They destroyed something culturally significant. It's hair, Cadet Park. It grows back." Borum's expression softened slightly. "Look, I understand you're upset. But squad cohesion is important. Sometimes that means enduring pranks. It's part of becoming a team. So you won't do anything. I'm telling you to adapt, to be tougher, to prove you belong here." Jiho stood silent for a long moment. Then he saluted and left the office. He returned to the barracks where his squad mates were celebrating their successful prank. They barely noticed him enter. Jiho walked to his bunk, sat down, and stared at the wall. Something had changed inside him. The humiliation had burned away something soft, leaving something harder behind. He wasn't angry in a hot, explosive way. It was cold, calculated, patient. Minho noticed him sitting there. "Hey, Baldy. No hard feelings, right?" "It was just a joke," Jiho didn't respond. He reached for his datapad and began scrolling through the Academy regulations. There were rules here, ancient protocols that most cadets never bothered to learn. His finger stopped on one particular entry: trial by squadron. It was an old tradition, dating back centuries to when the Academy first opened. Any cadet who felt wronged by their squad could invoke the right to challenge them. A formal combat exercise where one fought against their entire squad. It was designed to prove worth through action rather than words. No one had invoked it in over 50 years. Most considered it suicide. Jiho read the requirements carefully. He read them again. Then he saved the regulation to his personal files. He looked up to find his squad mates watching him, uncertain now. Jiho said nothing. He simply laid back on his bunk, put his hands behind his head, and closed his eyes. But he wasn't sleeping. He was planning. The morning after the incident, Jiho woke before the others. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror, running his hand over his smooth scalp. The person staring back looked different. Harder somehow. Good, he thought. Let them see what they created. He went through his morning routine in silence. Physical training, shower, breakfast. His squad mates tried to gauge his mood, but Jiho gave them nothing. No anger, no sadness, no reaction at all. He simply existed alongside them like a ghost. 3 days passed this way. Jiho spoke only when required for training exercises. He performed his duties perfectly, followed every order, completed every task. But the warmth that had been there before, the small attempts at friendship, were gone completely. On the 4th day, he visited the Academy Records office. The clerk was a small, furred creature from a species Jiho didn't recognize. She looked up from her terminal with large, curious eyes. "Can I help you, Cadet?" "I need to file a formal challenge," Jiho said, placing his datapad on her desk. "Trial by Squadron, Protocol 7, Section 14. The clerk blinked. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" "Trial by Squadron. It's in the Academy regulations. I'm invoking my right to challenge my squad to formal combat." The clerk's fur stood on end. That protocol hasn't been used in decades." "Are you certain?" "I'm certain." She pulled up the regulation on her terminal, reading through it with growing concern. "This is a serious matter, Cadet Park. Once filed, it cannot be withdrawn. You would face your entire squad in a full combat simulation. The injury risk is significant." "I understand. May I ask why you're doing this?" Jiho's jaw tightened. "Personal reasons." The clerk studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well. I'll process the filing. The challenge will be reviewed by the Academy Board. If approved, you'll be notified of the date and combat parameters. Thank you. As Jiho left the office, the clerk watched him go, then immediately sent a priority message to the senior staff. This was going to cause problems. The notification came 2 hours later. Jiho was in the training gym when his datapad chimed. The message was official, bearing the Academy seal. His challenge had been approved. The trial by squadron would take place in 3 weeks during the end-of-cycle war games. Thousands of cadets would be watching. When Jiho returned to the barracks, his squadmates were already there. Minho stood in the center of the room holding his own datapad, his forearms crossed. The others clustered around him, looking between the message and Jiho. "You challenged us?" Minho said, his voice filled with disbelief. "You actually invoked trial by squadron?" "I did," Jiho replied calmly. Hyerin laughed, though it sounded uncertain. "You realize it's 5 against 1, right? You're going to get destroyed." "Maybe." Daejin's crystalline body flashed with confused colors. "This is insane. Why would you do this?" Jiho looked at each of them in turn. "You humiliated me. You destroyed something important to me. You think it was a joke. I'm going to show you it wasn't." Yuna ruffled her feathers aggressively. "You're going to get yourself hurt over hair? Over a stupid tradition from a backwards planet?" "Yes," Jiho said simply. Sunwoo, who rarely spoke, clicked his mandibles. "You will lose. We are trained fighters. We are coordinated. You are one human." "We'll see." Minho stepped forward, using his height advantage to loom over Jiho. "I'm going to enjoy this. You think you're tough because you're from Earth? You're about to learn that your death world means nothing here. We're going to embarrass you in front of the entire Academy." Jiho met his gaze without flinching. 3 weeks. Combat arena, be ready." He walked past them to his bunk, leaving his squadmates staring after him. Word spread quickly through the Academy. By dinner, everyone knew about the challenge. Cadets whispered as Jiho passed in the corridors. Some looked at him with pity, others with curiosity, a few with respect for his courage, even if they thought it was suicidal. The betting started almost immediately. The odds were 50-1 against Jiho. Most cadets put money on his squad winning within the first 10 minutes. A few bet he'd last 15. Almost no one thought he had a chance. Jiho didn't care about the odds. He had 3 weeks to prepare. He stopped eating in the cafeteria. Instead, he ordered high-density ration packs designed for species from heavy-gravity worlds. They tasted terrible, but they packed enormous amounts of protein and calories into small packages. His body would need fuel for what was coming. Every spare moment was spent in the combat simulators. Jiho ran scenario after scenario, studying his squadmates' fighting styles. He watched recordings of their training exercises, noting their patterns, their preferences, their weaknesses. Minho relied too much on his strength. Heron was fast but fragile. Daejin's crystalline structure was strong but brittle. Yuna depended on aerial superiority. Sunwoo fought defensively, waiting for openings. He knew how they moved. Now he had to learn how to beat them. The physical training was brutal. Jiho pushed himself harder than ever before. He ran until his legs screamed. He lifted weights until his muscles burned. He practiced hand-to-hand combat against training drones set to maximum difficulty. The station's medical staff noticed his increased visits to the recovery pods, but they said nothing. Late at night, when the barracks were quiet, Jiho would lie in his bunk and run scenarios in his mind. 5 opponents, multiple terrains, limited equipment. The variables were endless, but one thing was constant. He had to be perfect. One mistake would end it. His squadmates watched his preparation with growing unease. The human who had tried to be friendly, who had smiled at their jokes, who had seemed almost soft, was gone. This new version of Jiho was focused and intense. He moved with purpose. He spoke only when necessary. He never smiled. "He's going to burn himself out before the match," Hyerin said one evening, watching Jiho return from another training session. His clothes were soaked with sweat, his breathing heavy. "Good," Minho replied. "Less work for us." But he didn't sound as confident as before. 2 weeks before the trial, Jiho received a visitor. Instructor Borum appeared at the training gym where he was practicing knife work against holograms. She watched him for several minutes before speaking. "Cadet Park." Jiho stopped, turning to face her. "Sir?" "I heard about your challenge." "Yes, sir." Borum walked closer, studying him. "You know you're probably going to lose." Probably. Then why do it? Jiho was quiet for a moment. Because they need to understand that actions have consequences. That what they did wasn't a joke. That I'm not weak just because I tried to be kind. Borum nodded slowly. I served with humans during the Outer Rim conflicts. Your people are survivors. You adapt, you endure, you overcome. But you also carry grudges like weapons. Is that a bad thing? Depends on what you do with them. She pulled a small data chip from her pocket and held it out. This contains training footage from Earth's military academies. Hand-to-hand combat, guerrilla tactics, survival techniques, things the other species don't teach because they don't need them. Jiho took the chip, surprised. Why are you helping me? Because what they did to you was wrong. And because someone needs to remind the galaxy why humans are called Deathworlders. She turned to leave, then paused. Show them what Earth breeds, Cadet. Show them survivors. That night, Jiho loaded the chip and watched hours of footage. He saw soldiers from Earth fighting in jungles, deserts, urban environments. He saw techniques developed over thousands of years of human warfare. Techniques that used an opponent's strength against them. Techniques that relied on endurance rather than raw power. His squad mates didn't train like this. Their species had evolved on gentler worlds. They knew standard military doctrine, but not the kind of brutal, practical combat that came from a planet that constantly tried to kill its inhabitants. The final week arrived. The combat arena was prepared. The rules were finalized. Full contact simulation with non-lethal weapons, advanced armor, and pain feedback systems accurate enough to make you feel every hit. Win conditions: incapacitate all opponents or capture the objective flag. Jiho stood in the equipment room selecting his gear. He chose minimal loadout. A rifle, a knife, basic armor. He didn't need much. Speed and tactics would matter more than equipment. His squad mates entered, laughing and confident. They had coordinated armor in their squad colors, matching weapons, communication gear. They looked like a professional military unit. They looked at Jiho standing alone with his simple gear and they smiled. Last chance to withdraw, Minho offered. We can forget this whole thing. Jiho checked his rifle's charge. No. Your funeral, Yuna said. The arena attendant called them forward. Combatants report to staging areas. The match begins in 10 minutes. As they walked toward the arena entrance, Jiho ran his hand over his scalp one more time. His hair had started growing back, but it was still short. Still a reminder. He stepped into the light of the arena entrance and the crowd's roar washed over him. The combat arena was enormous. It stretched over 2 square kilometers, divided into multiple terrain zones designed to test every aspect of military skill. Dense jungle in the north, urban ruins in the east, rocky highlands in the west, open desert in the south. At the center stood a fortified position where the objective flag waited. Thousands of cadets filled the observation decks. Screens throughout the academy carried live feeds. This was entertainment, a spectacle. A chance to watch the lone human get what everyone thought he deserved for his arrogance. Jiho stood in his starting position at the southern edge. Through his helmet's display, he could see his squad mates grouped together at the northern entrance. They were already moving, already coordinating, already hunting him. The countdown appeared in his vision. 10 seconds, 9, 8, Jiho's breathing slowed. His heart rate steadied. He thought of his grandfather, who had fought in wars before humanity reached the stars, who had survived when survival seemed impossible. 3, 2, 1. The match began. Jiho sprinted immediately into the jungle zone. He didn't head for the objective. That's what they expected. Instead, he moved perpendicular to the direct path, using the dense vegetation for cover. His boots made minimal noise on the soft ground. Years of moving through earth forests had taught him how to step lightly. Through his helmet's communication system, he could hear his squad mates talking. Their channels were supposed to be private, but Jiho had spent the last 3 weeks learning how to tap into their frequencies. It was technically against regulations, but not explicitly forbidden. Split into 2 groups, Minho's voice came through. Higher-in Dijin, you're with me. Yuna, Sunwoo circle around from the west. We'll catch him between us. They were using standard hunting tactics, effective against most opponents. But Jiho wasn't most opponents. He found what he was looking for, a narrow ravine with steep sides and heavy undergrowth. Perfect. Jiho set his first trap, using his knife to cut vine-like plants and create a tripwire across the ravine floor. Then he positioned his rifle to cover the approach and retreated further into the jungle. Minutes passed. Jiho moved silently, setting 2 more traps in likely approach routes. Simple but effective, the kind of thing humans had used for thousands of years. Yuna's voice crackled over the intercepted channel. "I have aerial view. No sign of the human in the open areas. He's hiding in the jungle," Sunwoo replied. "Typical Deathworlder behavior. Like an animal." "Then we'll flush him out," Yuna said. Jiho watched from concealment as Yuna's winged form appeared above the canopy, circling. She was looking for movement, for heat signatures, for any sign of him. But Jiho had covered himself with mud and leaves, breaking up his outline. An old trick from Earth's military history. Sunwoo entered the ravine below, moving carefully. His insectoid armor made him look dangerous, but Jiho knew the weakness. The joints between chitinous plates were flexible but vulnerable. One good hit there would disable him. The insectoid's leg caught the tripwire, the trap sprung perfectly. Bent branches released, whipping across the ravine with force. They caught Sunwoo's legs, sweeping them out from under him. He fell hard, and before he could recover, Jiho's rifle fired 3 times. Stun rounds, non-lethal but effective. They hit Sunwoo's exposed joints exactly where Jiho had aimed. The insectoid's armor registered the hits. Pain feedback kicked in. Sunwoo screamed and collapsed, his body spasming. His vital signs didn't show critical injury, but the combat system registered him as incapacitated. Out of the fight, first elimination. 4 to go, Sunwoo's down. Yuna's voice was panicked now. "I'm coming in." But Jiho was already moving. He'd learned from watching Yuna train. She was fast and could attack from above, but she committed fully to her dives. No hesitation, no holding back. It made her predictable. He positioned himself in a small clearing visible from above. Bait, Yuna saw him and dove immediately, her talons extended, her weapon aimed. She was fast, incredibly fast. But Jiho had been training in Earth's heavy gravity for weeks, building muscle and reflexes she couldn't match. At the last second, he rolled. Yuna's talons scraped the ground where he'd been. She tried to pull up, but Jiho had anticipated this too. He'd thrown smoke grenades into the clearing. They detonated, filling the area with thick chemical smoke. Yuna's species relied heavily on vision. The smoke blinded her. She flapped her wings, trying to clear it, trying to gain altitude. Jiho's rifle cracked twice. Both rounds found their mark, hitting Yuna's wing joints. She spiraled, crashed into the trees, and didn't get up. The combat system registered her as incapacitated. 2 down, 3 to go. The observation decks had gone silent. Cadets who had been laughing and betting against Jiho were now staring at the screens in shock. The human had taken out 2 opponents in less than 10 minutes without taking a single hit. Minho's voice came over the channel, angry now. "Everyone converge on my position. We're not playing games anymore." Jiho smiled grimly. "Good. Let them regroup. Let them feel the pressure." He moved through the jungle, heading toward the rocky highlands. The terrain there would work in his favor. Daejin was strong, but his crystalline body made him heavy. Climbing would be difficult for him. The highlands rose sharply from the jungle floor. Massive boulders, narrow passages, steep inclines. Jiho climbed quickly, his earth-developed muscles handling the effort easily. He found a position with good visibility and waited. Minho, Hyerin, and Daejin appeared below, moving cautiously now. They'd learned their lesson about splitting up. "He's somewhere up there," Minho said, scanning the rocks. "Daejin, can you sense vibrations through the stone?" The crystalline nodded. "Give me a moment." Jiho had expected this. Daejin's species could detect movement through solid surfaces, but they could also be fooled. Jiho picked up a fist-sized rock and threw it hard to his left. It bounced off several boulders before coming to rest. "There," Daejin pointed. 50 meters left side. They moved toward the false position. Jiho waited until they were committed, then triggered his trap. He'd spent precious time setting up a rock slide, carefully positioning loose stones above a narrow passage. The rocks tumbled down in a controlled avalanche. Nothing deadly, but more than enough to scatter the group. Minho's forearms helped him dodge. Hyerin flowed away like water. But Daejin was too slow. The rocks hammered into him. His crystalline body was strong but brittle. Cracks spread across his form as the impact registered. The combat system detected structural damage beyond recovery limits. Daejin was eliminated, 3 down. 2 to go, Minho roared in frustration. "Enough of this." He charged up the slope, using all 4 arms to climb with terrifying speed. Hyerin followed, her fluid body adapting to the terrain. They were done being careful. They wanted blood. Jiho didn't run. Instead, he moved to a specific section of the highlands where the arena had created a gravity manipulation zone. It was a training feature, allowing cadets to experience different planetary conditions. The controls were accessible to anyone in the arena. As Minho and Hyeron closed in, Jiho activated the zone. Gravity tripled instantly. The effect was devastating.
Minho, who weighed perhaps 90 kilograms in standard gravity, suddenly weighed 270.
His forearms, normally an advantage, became dead weight. He crashed to the ground, unable to support himself. Hyeron's fluid body spread flat under the pressure. She couldn't move, couldn't fight, could barely breathe. But Jiho had trained for this. He'd spent weeks doing exercises in high-gravity conditions, pushing his body to adapt. Earth's gravity was twice standard. 3 times standard was brutal but manageable. He walked toward Minho slowly, rifle aimed. The Valerian struggled to lift even one arm in defense. "You wanted to see what a Deathworlder looks like," Jiho said quietly. "This is what we look like. We come from a world that crushes everything weak. That drowns the slow. That starves the unprepared. We survive because we have no choice," he fired. Stun rounds hit Minho in the chest, triggering the combat system. Eliminated. Hyeron tried to speak, but the gravity was too much. Jiho adjusted his aim and fired. She went limp. Eliminated. The arena fell absolutely silent. Jiho stood alone among the rocks, chest heaving, covered in dirt and sweat. 5 opponents down. The match was over. Then he looked up at the central objective flag, still uncaptured in the fortified position. His squad mates had been so focused on hunting him that they'd forgotten about the actual objective. Jiho smiled. He'd won the fight, but he wasn't done yet. He deactivated the gravity zone, shouldered his rifle, and began walking toward the center of the arena. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the lone human moved through the battlefield he'd turned into his hunting ground. When he reached the fortified position, he simply walked in and took the flag. Complete victory. The arena speakers announced the result. Combat concluded. Winner, Cadet Jiho Park. Total time, 27 minutes. Then the crowd erupted. Not in mockery this time. In amazement. In respect. In fear, Jiho stood holding the flag, looking up at the thousands of faces staring down at him. He touched his shaved head once, remembering why he was here. They had humiliated him as a joke. He had destroyed their entire squad in return. The message was clear. Never underestimate a human. The medical bay was busy. 5 cadets were being treated for injuries that, while not permanent, would keep them in recovery pods for days. Jiho sat in the waiting area, still in his combat gear. Watching medical staff rush back and forth, his body ached. The adrenaline was wearing off, and he could feel every bruise, every strained muscle, every impact he'd absorbed during the fight. The recovery pod would fix most of it, but first the doctors wanted to run scans. Apparently they were fascinated by his physiology. Dr. Tay, a small mammalian species with excellent bedside manner, approached with a data pad. "Cadet Park, your scans are remarkable. You sustained 3 fractured ribs, severe muscle strain in both legs, and minor internal bleeding. Yet you continued fighting at full capacity." "Yes, sir," Jiho replied. "How?" The doctor seemed genuinely curious. Any other species would have been incapacitated by these injuries. Jiho shrugged, wincing at the movement. "Pain is just information. You learn to process it differently when it's always there." "Always there? Earth's gravity is constant. The pressure, the weight, the strain. You grow up with pain as normal. Your body adapts. Your mind adapts. You learn what's actually dangerous versus what just hurts." Dr. Tay made notes on his data pad. "Fascinating. Your species evolved to simply endure. No wonder you're classified as a Deathworld race." Before Jiho could respond, the medical bay doors opened. Instructor Borum entered, her expression unreadable. She nodded to the doctor and approached Jiho. "Cadet Park, walk with me." Jiho stood, following her into the hallway despite his protesting body. They walked in silence for a moment before Borum spoke. "That was the most brutal combat trial this academy has seen in 50 years. I followed all regulations, sir." "You did. That's what makes it remarkable." She stopped, turning to face him. "You used primitive tactics. Traps, ambushes, environmental manipulation. Things we don't teach because modern warfare is supposed to be more advanced. Advanced tactics are predictable, sir. Everyone learns the same strategies from the same manuals. They expect certain responses. I gave them something different. Borum studied him. You're not just a fighter. You're a tactician. You understood your opponents better than they understood themselves. I had 3 weeks to study them, and they had the same 3 weeks to study you. But they underestimated you because you're human, because they thought your planet made you primitive. She smiled slightly. You showed them that primitive doesn't mean inferior. Permission to speak freely, sir? Granted. They needed to learn that lesson. Not just my squad. Everyone watching. Humans aren't weak. We're not inferior. We're different, and that difference has value. Borum nodded slowly. Message received, Cadet. Trust me, everyone got it. The footage has already spread beyond this station. Military academies across 3 sectors are talking about the human who beat 5 opponents alone. I didn't do it for fame, sir. I know. You did it for honor. For respect. For your grandfather. She placed a hand on his shoulder. He would be proud. Jiho felt something tighten in his chest. He'd been so focused on winning, on proving his point, that he hadn't thought about what it meant. But now, hearing those words, he understood. He'd honored his family. He'd honored his people. Go get treated, Cadet, Borum said. You've earned the rest. 2 days later, Jiho was released from medical. His injuries had healed completely, the recovery pods working their technological magic. His squad mates were released the same day, though they looked worse than he felt. Jiho was walking back to the barracks when he encountered them in the hallway. All 5 stood together, looking uncertain. Minho stepped forward first. Park, he said, his forearms held in a neutral position. Can we talk? Jiho stopped, waiting. Hiren moved closer, her translucent skin showing colors that indicated shame in her species. What we did to you was wrong. We thought we were just having fun, but we hurt you. We disrespected your culture. We treated you like you didn't matter. You did, Jiho confirmed. Dejin's crystalline body flashed apologetically. We judged you without knowing you. We assumed you were inferior because you're human, because you're from Earth. You did that too. Yuna ruffled her feathers nervously. I've been thinking about what you said during the fight, about Earth being a world that crushes the weak. I didn't understand what that meant until I fought you. You're not just strong. You're built to survive things that would kill us. Sunwoo clicked his mandibles. I have studied Earth since the trial. Your planet is classified as one of the most dangerous in charted space. Your species should not exist, yet you thrive. I did not understand this before. I understand now. Minho took a breath. We owe you an apology. A real one. What we did was bullying, not bonding. It was cruel, not funny, and you had every right to challenge us. Jiho looked at each of them. He could see genuine regret in their expressions, their postures, their tones. They weren't apologizing because they lost. They were apologizing because they finally understood. I accept your apology, Jiho said quietly. Thank you, Hiren said, for accepting it, and for not seriously hurting us. We watched the footage. You had opportunities to do real damage, but you always pulled back, always used just enough force. You could have broken bones, caused permanent injury. You didn't. I didn't want to hurt you, Jiho admitted. I wanted to beat you. There's a difference, Minho extended one of his 4 hands. Can we start over? Actually try to be squad mates this time? Jiho looked at the offered hand. Part of him wanted to refuse, to hold on to the anger. But another part, the part that remembered why he'd joined the military in the first place, knew that wasn't the answer. He'd made his point. He'd earned respect. Holding a grudge would only poison what they could build. He took Minho's hand. Start over. But understand something, if anyone ever touches my hair again without permission, there won't be a trial. There will just be consequences. Understood, Minho said quickly. Completely understood, the tension broke. Dejin actually laughed, a crystalline chiming sound. You know the entire academy is terrified of you now, right? Good, Jiho said, surprising himself with a small smile. Maybe they'll think twice before messing with the next human cadet. There are more coming? Yuna asked. 3 in the next intake, according to the roster. Now that I've proven humans can compete here, more are applying. Sunwoo nodded approvingly. They will be respected. Your actions have guaranteed that. They walked together back to the barracks, the conversation gradually becoming easier. They talked about the fight, about tactics, about what they'd learned. Minho admitted he'd had nightmares about the rock slide. Hiren confessed that the high-gravity trap had made her question ever fighting humans again. Dejin wanted to know how Jiho had predicted every move they made. I watched you, Jiho explained. Every training session, every exercise. I learned how you think, how you fight, what you prefer. You were coordinated, but coordination makes you predictable if someone knows the patterns. That's terrifying, Yuna said. That's tactical analysis, Jiho corrected. When they reached the barracks, they found it had been decorated. Not by them, but by other cadets. Banners congratulating Jiho hung on the walls. Someone had left gifts, energy drinks, protein packs, even a small statue of a human warrior. Notes were scattered across his bunk from cadets he'd never met, expressing admiration or asking for training advice. You're famous, Heron said. Reading one of the notes, I'm uncomfortable, Jiho replied. But he couldn't help smiling a little. That evening, they sat together in the common area. For the first time since Jiho had arrived, they actually talked. Not around him, but with him. They asked about Earth, about human culture, about his family. He told them about his grandfather, about the meaning of his hair, about growing up on a planet that constantly challenged you. They shared their own stories in return. Minho talked about his homeworld's peaceful valleys. Heron described oceans so calm you could see to the bottom. Dejin spoke of crystal caves that sang in the wind. Yuna explained how her people danced in thermal currents. Sunwoo described hives that functioned like single organisms. Jiho listened, fascinated. These worlds were so different from Earth. No wonder they couldn't understand him at first. They'd never experienced real danger, real pressure, real survival challenges. Earth sounds horrible, Dejin said honestly. It is, Jiho agreed, and it's home. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. Because it made you who you are, Minho said. Exactly. Late that night after the others had gone to sleep, Jiho stood in front of the mirror again. His hair was growing back, still short but visible. He ran his hand over it, feeling the new growth. The person in the mirror looked different now. Not harder, stronger, more complete. He'd come to this academy to prove himself. He'd done that. But more importantly, he'd taught his squad mates something valuable. He'd taught them respect. 3 weeks had passed since the trial. Life at the academy had changed in ways both obvious and subtle. The most obvious change was how people looked at Jiho when he walked through the corridors. The mockery was gone. The dismissive glances were gone. Instead, cadets nodded respectfully as he passed. Some even stepped aside to let him through. It made him uncomfortable at first. He hadn't fought for worship. He'd fought for respect. But gradually, he learned to accept it with a simple nod in return. The video of his victory had spread far beyond the academy. Military channels across multiple sectors had analyzed his tactics. Defense analysts debated whether his approach represented a new paradigm in small unit combat. Some called it brilliant. Others called it barbaric. Everyone agreed it was effective. Human recruitment to military academies had increased by 300%. Young men and women from Earth saw what Jiho had done and realized they too could compete among the stars. They too could prove that humanity belonged. Jiho received messages daily from aspiring cadets asking for advice. He tried to respond to as many as he could, though his own training schedule remained demanding. His squad had changed too. Not just in how they treated him, but in how they trained. Minho had started studying irregular warfare tactics. Hiren practiced fighting in adverse conditions. Dejin worked on flexibility, rather than relying solely on strength. Yuna learned ground combat to supplement her aerial skills. Sunwoo studied ambush recognition. They were becoming better soldiers because Jiho had shown them their weaknesses. More importantly, they were becoming his friends. One morning, Jiho was called to Commander Ramos's office. The commander was a veteran of multiple campaigns, a Terran like Instructor Borum, with gray hair and scars that told stories of battles won. Cadet Park, Ramos said, gesturing to a chair. Sit, Jiho sat curious. He hadn't been in trouble since the trial, and that had been sanctioned. Ramos pulled up a holographic display. I've been reviewing your performance. Academic scores, exemplary. Physical training, top 5% of your class. Combat efficiency, you're ranked first after that stunt in the arena. Thank you, sir. I'm not finished. Ramos zoomed in on a specific data set. Your tactical analysis scores are exceptional. You demonstrated understanding of terrain, psychology, resource management, and adaptive strategy at a level we usually only see in senior officers. Jiho wasn't sure where this was going. I'm reassigning you, Ramos continued. You'll remain with your squad for basic training, but you're also being placed in an accelerated program. We're developing a new unit, specialized in unconventional warfare. We need people who think differently, who can adapt to impossible situations. A special operations unit? Something like that. It's being called Project Endurance. The idea is to train soldiers who can operate independently in hostile environments with minimal support. Given that you've already proven you can do exactly that, I want you in the first class. Jiho felt a mix of pride and apprehension. When does it start? Next cycle. You'll have 6 months of standard training with your squad first. Use that time to teach them what you know. Then you'll begin advanced training. Ramos deactivated the hologram. This is optional, cadet. I won't force you. But I think you'd be wasted in a standard infantry position. Jiho thought about it. 6 months ago, he would have been thrilled with any position that let him serve. Now being offered something special, something that recognized his unique skills, felt right. I accept. Sir? Good. Dismissed. As Jiho left the office, he nearly collided with someone in the hallway. It was Instructor Borum, who smiled slightly. I recommended you for that program, she said without preamble. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. It's going to be harder than anything you've experienced. They'll push you to your limits and beyond. She paused. But if any human can handle it, it's you. Jiho nodded and continued back to the barracks. His squad mates were there, preparing for afternoon training exercises. Where were you? Minho asked. Meeting with the commander. Everyone stopped what they were doing, turning to look at him with concern. Are you in trouble? Hyerin asked worriedly. No. I've been selected for a special program. He explained briefly, leaving out details he wasn't sure were public. His squad mates reacted with mixed emotions. Pride, definitely, but also disappointment that he'd be leaving eventually. 6 months, Dejin said. We have 6 more months together. Then we make them count, Yuna declared, and they did. Over the following months, Jiho's squad became one of the most effective units in their training class. They learned from each other, combining their natural abilities with new techniques. Minho's strength became more strategic. Hyerin's speed became unpredictable. Dejin's defense became adaptive. Yuna's attacks became multidimensional. Sanwu's patience became tactical brilliance, and Jiho learned from them too. He discovered that humans weren't superior, just different. Each species brought unique advantages to combat. The key was learning to work together, to complement each other's strengths and cover each other's weaknesses. 4 months in, new cadets arrived at the academy. Among them were 3 humans, Kaito, Sophia, and Marcus. Jiho was asked to meet with them as an unofficial welcome. They gathered in a small conference room, the 3 new cadets looking nervous and excited. You're Jiho Park, Sophia said immediately. We saw your trial. Everyone on Earth saw it. You're the reason we're here. Don't put that on me, Jiho said with a slight smile. You're here because you earned your spots. But you proved humans could compete, Kaito said. Before you, there were only a handful of us in the entire military. Now there are hundreds applying. Marcus leaned forward. They're going to test us because we're human. They're going to expect us to be like you. How do we handle that? Jiho thought carefully before answering. Don't try to be me. Be yourselves. Yes, you'll face challenges because you're human. Some people will expect too much. Others will expect too little. Ignore both. Focus on being the best soldier you can be. What if they discriminate against us? Sophia asked. They might, Jiho admitted. But regulations exist for a reason. Use them if you need to. And remember, you're not alone anymore. There are other humans here now. We watch out for each other. He spent 2 hours with them, answering questions, sharing advice, helping them understand what they'd face. When they left, they looked more confident, more ready. That evening, Jiho sat with his squad in their common area. They'd made it truly theirs now, with decorations from all their homeworlds. Valerian tapestries hung near Aquarian water sculptures. Crystalline art pieces reflected light onto avian feather displays. Insectoid geometric patterns framed human photographs. 2 months left, Minho said quietly. Then you leave for your special program. I do? We'll miss you, Hyerin admitted. You became the heart of this squad. You'll be fine without me, Jiho said. You're all better soldiers now than when we started. You'll probably get a new squad mate who'll bring new skills. Won't be the same, Dejin muttered. Yuna ruffled her feathers thoughtfully. We should do something. A squad tradition. Something to remember this time. Like what? Sunwoo asked. They debated ideas, eventually settling on something simple but meaningful. They would create a squad banner together, with symbols from each of their cultures. It would hang in their barracks as a reminder of what they'd built together. They worked on it over several evenings, each contributing designs and elements. Minho drew strength symbols from Valerian tradition. Hieren added flowing water patterns from Aquarian art. Dejin contributed crystalline geometry. Yuna included stylized feathers. Sunwoo created intricate mathematical patterns, and Jiho added a simple element. A small warrior figure with short hair, standing among symbols of the other cultures. When it was finished, they hung it proudly above the entrance to their barracks. The final 2 months passed quickly. Training exercises became more complex, more challenging. Jiho's squad consistently scored in the top 5% of their class. They moved together like a well-oiled machine, each member knowing exactly where the others would be and what they'd do. On Jiho's last day before transferring to Project Endurance, the squad organized a small ceremony. Nothing official, just them saying goodbye in their own way. Minho spoke first. When you arrived, I thought you were a primitive from a backwards world. I was wrong. You taught me that different doesn't mean inferior. That strength comes in many forms. That honor matters more than pride, Hieren added. You showed me that kindness isn't weakness, that someone can be gentle and still be strong. You tried to be our friend from the start. We were the ones who failed. Dejin stepped forward with a small wrapped package. We made something for you. To remember us, Jiho unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a small crystal sculpture depicting 6 figures standing together. 5 were clearly alien species. 1 was human. All were in combat poses, but they were positioned protectively around each other. It's beautiful, Jiho said softly. Yuna smiled. Dejin made it. We all contributed ideas, but his artistic skill is what brought it to life. Sunwoo spoke last, his voice formal. You have honored us with your presence. You have taught us wisdom. You have shown us strength. We are better soldiers because of you, better people because of you. We will not forget.